Poso maoni wiak, waiwanan kitanan ni mua e yoski piataya posnotaman e yum MITW Podcast. E yospis piataya posnapi notaman e ne hisikimaka e yoso matnamin e hakihi.
Welcome to the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin podcast. We are your hosts, Gary Dodge
and Sheena Wapus. On this episode, we are joined by guest Vaughn Bowles, Public Information Officer for the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin. I would like to remind people we request that you send in your COVID-19 related questions to us at podcast@mitw.org. Welcome, Vaughn.
Thanks, guys.
So, speaking of sending in questions, all of these questions that we're covering today were sent in to us from a listener. So they're quite extensive and they're all revolving around the vaccines, I should say. So Vaughn, the first question was, which vaccines have been peer-reviewed by a medical journal?
So right now, I haven't seen any of the vaccines reviewed in medical journals yet. That said, the vaccines and their formulas and the science that they're based on has been extensively reviewed by professional scientists and medical professionals working for the Food and Drug Administration or the FDA prior to receiving any sort of emergency use authorization. These are also known as EUAs. So it's not like these vaccines are being released without any sort of oversight. They're just being reviewed by a different group of professionals.
Okay, and then the second question is, if you've suffered damages as a result of manufacturers' vaccines, does your claim go through a special court with no discovery or depositions?
So there's not a special court set up. What there is right now is there's something called the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program that the federal government runs, and it helps pay for or defer costs for medical care for anyone that may experience any sort of symptoms or serious reactions related to receiving the vaccines. Claims need to be submitted to the CICP within a year of receiving the vaccine, and we can list the link to contact the CICP in the show notes and also give them their phone number. So if anyone is worried about having reactions and being deprived of legal recourse, there are ways to help through those situations.
Okay, and then since mRNA is an untested format of vaccine, is it safe?
This is a really good question. Dr. Schlegel addressed this actually in a public service announcement, I believe this was last week, and one of the things that she talked about was how the mRNA technology, it's not untested. The technology's been around for about 15 to 16 years now. This is just the first time we've had the equipment to be able to deploy it within a vaccine. So yes, it's safe when people take precautions. That said, right now, because the studies haven't had a fourth phase long-term study, they're recommending that no individuals under the age of 16 take it. And they also recommend that individuals that are, planning to be pregnant or breastfeeding, refrain from taking it. They also strongly recommend that individuals consult with their doctors beforehand if they have allergies, any sort of hay fever or bleeding disorders, or using blood thinners, maybe immunocompromised, and have received any other COVID-19 vaccine. They really don't want those two being mixed because they're not sure of what the results would be or if it would create any sort of immunity. Also, if you've had any sort of reactions to any of the ingredients in this vaccine or other vaccines, that's something you should definitely let your doctor know about. If you want to know what's in the vaccine as far as salient ingredients, we can also post that in our show notes today. There's a PDF that explains what's in the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine that's been approved for emergency use. And so you can definitely talk with healthcare professionals and stuff about if you feel it's safe for you to take or not.
Okay, is the mRNA vaccine mechanism telling your body to generate viral particles?
Short answer is no. The mRNA in the vaccine itself just code for the spike particles of the virus, and they've mapped out the entire gene sequence for the COVID-19 virus, and so they know which ones are just for the spike protein. So no, it's not going to generate an entire virus in your body. That's what happens when it gets infected. This is essentially a truncated or shortened version of that material, and so you don't get an entire virus generated in your body. Just those little proteins that can be picked up by your immune system.
Is mRNA linked to cancer-causing changes leading to uncontrolled cell division?
This is highly unlikely, and here's why. So mRNA is naturally generated by all living things. What happens in our cellular machinery is that our DNA is copied in the nucleus of the cell, and it sends out mRNA into the cytoplasm, where it's picked up by various sorts of cellular machinery. In this case, they're ribosomes. Then these mRNA are read and copied over into proteins. That said, this mRNA isn't traveling into the nucleus where the DNA is stored. That's where all the information for cellular division occurs. And so it's really unlikely that if you receive this mRNA, it'll do any sort of rearranging of genes or information within the nucleus or your DNA. So it probably will not cause uncontrolled cellular division. That said, they're still working on their long-term trials, and so they're going to observe more and find out, what some of the potential ramifications of using this type of vaccine is.
And what about causing mutation of preonic proteins?
Preonic proteins, do cause a lot of problems. This is also pretty unlikely since there are various forms of chaperoning proteins that prevent misfolds of newly transcribed proteins, translated proteins. So it's very unlikely that these will generate prions within the body.
Is mRNA inducing spike protein expression in off-target cells such as nerves, for example, spinal cord, face, arms, etc.?
No, the injection is given intramuscularly, and so there's no protein or sequence that codes for the mRNA from the vaccine to be exported or transported to any other type of cell. So it's very unlikely that this will find its way through the body to the nervous system at all. And another thing about mRNA is it's incredibly delicate. And so it may not even stay within the muscles that it's injected into for a long period of time. Once transcribed, mRNA degrades fairly rapidly. And so this is something most people shouldn't worry about.
What happens if you're injected with an mRNA vaccine that has been improperly diluted, not kept at proper temperature, or left out beyond the recommended time?
Not much will happen, actually. It's kind of like we just talked about. Because of the fragility of mRNA, if it's left out or, its temperature increases to a specific level, the sequence just breaks down. Similarly, if it's diluted beyond what it should, there's not enough concentrate, it just breaks down again, and, it really won't affect the body much. So you wouldn't be able to achieve any sort of immunity either. So that is one of the issues, is you won't gain that immunity, but it probably won't harm you either.
Why is the standard vaccine type the one used for over 100 years of injecting replication deficient virus? where little to no viral particles are generated, not considered, such as the adenosine vaccine or the Sputnik V.
So what Gary is talking about, or what this individual is asking, is why we didn't use attenuated viruses for the COVID-19 vaccine. There are various groups that are working with attenuated viruses, which are viruses that have usually been heat treated and degraded to the point where they don't cause viral replication. However, it's just not the technology that Pfizer decided to use for this. And it's a good tried and true type of technology. They've just found that the mRNA application and approach is a lot more effective than the attenuated viruses. If you're getting, say, a flu shot, that usually only has between a 40 to 60% effective rate, and it uses attenuated viruses. They're finding that the mRNA sequence is much more effective and reaches levels of between 90 and 95% effectiveness at generating immunity. And so that's part of the reason they went with that. It's just a progression of science and technology. And if you can find something that helps, save more lives and is more effective, it makes sense to use that. Referring to the Sputnik vaccine, that was the Russian created vaccine for COVID-19. And that specific virus, from what I've read, had a very small patient pool that tested it out. It was only approximately 30 individuals before it was taken into production, and they've actually recalled that from a lot of production facilities because they're finding that there are people that are having a lot more reactions to that Sputnik V compared to the Pfizer vaccine. The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine went through a phase 3 trial, had, I believe it was 20,000 individuals that participated in that study to make sure that there weren't reactions, long or short term. And so they've decided, or they've found that it's a significantly safer option than say the Sputnik vaccine.
All right. Can tribes or tribal nations exercise sovereignty in the bidding and purchase of international standard type vaccine candidates without political or legal blowback?
So from what I understand, technically tribes could assert their rights as a sovereign nation to purchase vaccines internationally. I know the Menominee tribe has decided to waive that right, and they're actually purchasing and distributing vaccines in conjunction with the state of Wisconsin. But there are maybe other tribes that decide to shop internationally, I know the majority of tribes here in Wisconsin are working with IHS to receive and distribute the vaccine. But I guess that is an option out there if they'd like to take it.
Since the Australian COVID Pfizer vaccine has been abandoned due to people testing positive for HIV, is SARS-CoV-2/COVID-19 similar to HIV?
From what I understand, COVID-19 isn't similar to HIV, and wasn't used in any sort of the vaccines weren't reverse engineered from HIV to come up with this type of technology. There are significant differences between COVID and HIV, and the tests with the Australian market, from what I understand, individuals didn't receive or didn't contract HIV from receiving the virus. It may have been undetected previously prior to screenings and receiving the vaccine. So I don't know all the specifics with the Australian Pfizer version, but it doesn't cause HIV. Wasn't reverse engineered from HIV. So I don't want people thinking it's unsafe or will cause those medical issues if they receive the virus.
Does it block proteins required by the body during pregnancy or conception?
So they're not totally sure yet if it blocks specific proteins required for pregnancy. And that's part of the reason why they're recommending that, pregnant women don't get the vaccine. They don't know if it will also cause any sort of birth defects. And so, individuals that are planning to be pregnant, are pregnant or breastfeeding, have been asked to not receive the vaccine, or if they do, talk to a medical professional beforehand and have, a lengthy discussion with them about the safety issues surrounding that.
Is it possible that women who receive the vaccine will become infertile?
That's always a possibility. As the phase 4 trials continue, we'll know more about that. And so we'll observe for the next 12 to 24 months to see if that is an issue that comes up.
Waiwanan for listening to the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also listen to the podcast on menominee-nsn.gov under the Community tab. Keep up to date by following us on Facebook at MITW Podcast. We do weekly updates with Vaughn and welcome any community questions you have regarding COVID-19. Please send them in to us via email at podcast@mitw.org.